Welcome to the Cincinnati Real Estate Investing Show. I'm your host, Slocomb Reed, and today our guest is also our co-host, Ian Cruz. Ian, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I am here in Cincinnati. We're recording in early February. It's only been above freezing once in the last 10 days, and it snowed. And being above freezing was actually part of the problem because it meant that snow could melt and then turn into ice overnight. How's the weather in Santa Cruz, California, Ian?
Weather's great over here in sunny California. Not missing Cincinnati's weather at this time of the year.
No, but you'll be in town later this month. You'll be at the Best Ever Meetup last Tuesday of the month. Ian, purpose of this episode is to give our listeners an opportunity to better know you as a co-host. So tell us your Cincinnati story. Why Cincinnati when you're a California kid your whole life? You'd never even been to the Midwest until you were interested in investing here.
I've been to the Midwest before I started investing here. So I think that there are logical, fundamental reasons why you want to invest in the Midwest, which I'm happy to talk about. There's definitely an appeal being over in California, where in Santa Clara County, where the median home price is 1.3 million, to be buying over in the Midwest in general. My connection to Cincinnati starts when I was 13 years old and had a subscription to NFL Sunday Ticket. And I was flipping through the channels and watched John Kitna throw a long bomb to it bounced off Samari Roll's hands. Chad Johnson turned over the other shoulder, caught it, scored a
Back when he was
touchdown.
still Chad Johnson.
Back when he was still Chad Johnson. They were a huge underdog. They were terrible the year before. They almost made a run at the playoffs. Somehow became a fan of Cincinnati, which somehow turned to me going to fly to Cincinnati to watch us beat the Ravens the next year.
When you were 14.
When I was 14, yeah.
Nice.
I have a picture of me at 14 crossing the Roebling Bridge. I thought White Castle was cool because we didn't have it over in California. So trying White Castle for the first time, that was my first exposure to Cincinnati. And sometimes it really is as simple when you're picking between different markets such as Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, which they're not exactly the same, but maybe a similar fundamental profile. When you zoom out and compare it to a different California market or other markets, sometimes that little connection makes a difference. And then the knowledge that you've been there multiple times, because I started going more often. And for me, started making connections outside the real estate world first before I became such a networker and started attending all the networking events over in Cincinnati. But even having friends, starting up a Bengals fan club that was posted on Bengals.com that attracted people.
In San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I was in San Jose and it got posted on Bengals.com. And every week we'd watch games and there would be another Ohio transplant that moved to California for a tech job or for a career move. And then I just asked them about Cincinnati. And when I started going to games, I get to go with them and they get to show me different neighborhoods, tell me more about their childhood or where they grew up, what high school they went to, or all the different things. And I started to feel like if I'm going to invest out of state, this is a good place to invest, a good place where I can get to know the market a little bit better, because I have found that having a street by street knowledge of where you're investing out of state is more important than just trying to pick the perfect market, but not have that kind of team or knowledge that'll carry you to. You can fail in just for that reason alone, right? Being kind of out of your depth, buying on the wrong street, not knowing, thinking, oh, this is a good pocket, but you mess up that way. So I felt like I would be well suited to be able to invest in Cincinnati for that reason.
Yeah, there are certainly a lot of non-local investors who make that mistake, right? They hear the name of a neighborhood, they don't realize diversity within that neighborhood. And when I say diversity, I'm talking about socioeconomic diversity, all the varying factors that can lead real estate investment to be success or failure. Locals, I didn't grow up in Cincinnati. I'm the local owner operator type investor. We see a lot of people come in, California money, New York money, Israel money, come in and make mistakes because they just don't understand the micros of their locations, their tenant bases, etc. Ian, paint a picture for us here. Where were you in life when you decided it was time to start looking at real estate investing in Cincinnati?
Sold a condo, as you can imagine, is quite expensive in the Bay Area. and bought a duplex. I think a lot of people, or house hacking in your backyard, that makes sense if you can make the numbers work. And my objective was to go the route of buying property every 2 years, taking advantage of the primary residence exclusion, moved up into a duplex. And then once I took care of that and took advantage of the benefits of obtaining property with a primary residence, then I started exploring Cincinnati, Ohio. During this time,
Is that Ian, is that because the sale of the condo left some money in the bank and you were looking to get a return on it?
I think it's a combination of things. It's having some extra money from the sale. It's knowing that I can't continue to scale. I can't continue to buy properties in my local area that'll cash flow, right? It was some personal events, such as helping my mother 1031 into an apartment in the Bay Area and wanting to do the same. But for me, wanting to do it in Ohio because I wanted more cash flow, right? So my active portfolio is just concentrated within one appreciation market, which is my Bay Area play, and then also chasing cash flow, but also looking in good pockets of Cincinnati, Ohio for the rest of my portfolio. And as I start to scale there, really trying to concentrate more of my active portfolio towards Ohio. So it's a combination of having extra funds. It's the understanding that I would be able to buy properties that can cash flow day one as well, and perhaps maybe joining various communities and really starting to take action as opposed to reading about it for so many years. Once you get the first deal done, that's when things really start moving.
Here's where I want to pick up. Ian, give us some context for your first acquisitions in Cincinnati.
My first deal in Cincinnati was a 6 unit, and I thought that it was a 6 unit in Norwood, Ohio that we bought for 375K. This was in 2022. So five two-bedroom units and one bedroom unit. So on paper, I'm thinking, wow, this should be able to cash flow quite well if we're getting at the time $1,000 for the two bedrooms. So that's 5,000 a month on the five two bedrooms and maybe 800 for the one bedroom. That would be 5,800. There was a vacancy and I was getting it at 3,400 a month incoming rents, but we knew once we stabilized the buildings, we could get it closer to 6K a month. So I bought the building for 300K. What attracted me at first to investing in a deal like that or in small multifamily was the idea of having multiple tenants and multiple units to cover any vacancies. And with me being a CPA, this deal seemed more like a math problem, right? And you just think, oh, look at the rents, look at the rent to price ratio. It more than meets the 1% rule of receiving 1% of the purchase price in monthly rent. So it seemed like a good deal on paper. I think that it was a great learning experience. We did pretty well with the property, but I learned a lot of things along the way, such as once you go into 5 units plus, which is something that I wanted to scale into on a bigger scale, but once you go into 5 units plus, you're in commercial apartments at that point. So commercial buildings have different lending guidelines, different lenders that will have the appetite to lend on it. But with the deal being so small, it was almost impossible to find a 200K loan on the property. Dealt with lending differences between multifamily and single family, some of the additional expenses that get passed on to the owner. And yeah, learn.
You have since sold this property, right?
Yes.
What part of Norwood is it in?
It was northwest pocket of Norwood. So in general, you'll attest to this. You'll probably chime in with more, but in general, the best part of Norwood is the presidential district. You have those four streets with that are named after the presidents. And then I like the pockets to the east of Montgomery, which is near Factory 52 on the northeast side, or on the kind of, if you go further south, there's a Whole Foods. If you're trying to meet the Whole Foods rule, you also get closer to Xavier as you go down south. West of Montgomery probably isn't as great, but I would still buy there any day. So I feel comfortable buying there as well. There are some specific streets that are not doing as well, basically due to tenant placement or things like that. I guess another tip for newer out of state investors, but I do join a lot of Facebook groups, which are not just real estate Facebook groups. I was in Norwood Strong for a very long time and some of the local neighborhood groups. So I see a lot of these things. I see that one street over seems to have a lot of floods, right? Just because of the way the streets are, right? I learned those things as well.
Yeah. So Norwood typically breaks into quadrants. like northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, like you were saying, the southeast being the presidential district and the closest to Hyde Park. So I don't own anything in Norwood right now, but I have owned in three of the four quadrants. The only one I haven't owned in is Northeast, because the house that I flipped over there was technically Pleasant Ridge. The only reason I don't own in Norwood right now is because it was more compelling to sell at some point. I'm a fan. I would say that Norwood is certainly not a homogeneous neighborhood. You can't just say Norwood and it means the same thing to everyone. Shouldn't mean the same thing to everyone because each of those quadrants invests very differently. In the Southwest quadrant, you have a lot more student rentals, and you have the highest income earning demographics, property owners, and tenant base in the presidential district, the Southeast quadrant, especially the Factory 52 coming in. The one thing I'd say there is that those nicer parts of Norwood make more sense as an investor if you're more focused on appreciation than cash flow, because there is a premium to be paid to buy real estate in those areas because the presidential district has it's the closest to the attractions of the area. Factory 52 is relatively new. It's really hot right now. So you're paying a premium for that part of Norwood. You're going to find better Norwood cash flow in the other quadrants. And I don't know that I have anything negative to say about the other quadrants, all things considered. I will say you need to know in that Northwest quadrant when you cross the boundary between Norwood and Bond Hill. You need to know on the south when it crosses into Evanston, and in the north when it crosses into Pleasant Ridge. You have that weird part where 45212, there's part of B Ridge that's in 45212, the Norwood zip code. Those are very different school districts, Norwood being Norwood and Pleasant Ridge being a neighborhood of Cincinnati, being Cincinnati Public, meaning that you also have access to Pleasant Ridge Montessori as a magnet elementary school right there. Those things matter. I like Norwood in general. I was just saying this before the recording. My brother is in town on business. He lives in upstate New York. So my dad, brother, my daughters, and I are going to go to Gordo's, my favorite burger place in all of greater Cincinnati. I'm excited to take him there. You've owned a few other things in Norwood as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Tell us about those deals.
Yeah. So started off with a 6 unit. I bought two other fourplexes there side by side that are north of the lateral. So that's also a different part. I have an Airbnb, which is on Sherman Ave, which we are converting now to a long-term rental. So we bought a few other properties in Norwood.
Single family was a short term rental going long term. Why are you doing that?
Airbnb, it's for a few things. So I bought that with partners through a deal through a platform called Fractional, and we partnered together to buy. We had a few partners self-managing the property, and due to life changes, and didn't want to keep self-managing the properties anymore. And separately, the Airbnb space is it can be quite competitive. There are a lot of Airbnbs in Cincinnati. I'm sure that some are crushing it, but we had it for a few years and we just figured that it was time to switch it over to a long-term rental. We were fortunate enough we bought this property. I had a major say in the property that we bought, and part of my view on buying it was being a little bit conservative in knowing we would have an exit strategy to convert it over to a long-term rental and still be able to either break even or cash flow. That did limit its upside a little bit. We could have paid somewhere in the 400s for something in Hyde Park or a different neighborhood.
But you would have been narrowing yourself to that short term furnished rental business plan in order to be able to cash flow.
Exactly. That's when we bought the property. We bought it at a great basis. So we bought it at 279. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath. It's going to cash flow as a long-term rental and with less of the headaches. And actually our cleaner is moving as well.
To know in your real estate investing story, do you have any other individual properties in the greater Cincinnati area that you and partners purchased? Other neighborhoods that you can tell us about your experience in?
Yeah, we scaled up slower with some 4 families and a 6 unit and deals like that. We bought an 8 unit, which we have also since sold over in Northside. It was two side by side fourplexes. And I think a theme that you're hearing from me and probably will continue to hear from me is that we don't just model what we get going in, we model the various scenarios and ways to get out of a deal as well. It's similar in fact pattern to the 8 unit in Norwood, that it's two two side-by-side fourplexes. In different circumstances, we financed with a commercial loan and we bundled in some rehab costs, and there are pros and cons to it. There are prepayment penalties to refinance with another lender. Commercial loans have their own terms. And then we also did a separate one where we financed as two separate fourplexes. And there's a little bit of arbitrage that you can even do, like for us, in buying our 8 unit that was valued based on income and then later selling the property as really attractive owner occupant fourplexes that somebody else may want to pay for to actually live in. So there was a little bit of arbitrage just throughout, just knowing that this fact pattern of two side by side fourplexes can go in different directions in how you sell it, how you buy it.
This is a perfect example of you make money when you buy. What we found was the opportunity to buy an 8 unit deal from a commercial broker who is not a realtor, not a member of the MLS, wasn't listing it publicly in that manner, was sharing it with their whole sphere. I could still consider it listed, but he was selling it as a commercial 8 unit deal, and it was two separately parceled four family. Northside, we're going to talk a lot about Northside, especially when I get the opportunity to introduce myself because I live there, love the neighborhood for investing and for many other reasons. As separately parceled four families in a thriving while also up and coming neighborhood in Cincinnati, they were worth significantly more separately parceled, already separately parceled, separately saleable through a residential process, going to the MLS and attracting those kinds of buyers, including owner occupants. One of them did sell to an owner occupant. We made money on that deal because of what you called the arbitrage. We were buying a commercial 8 unit deal from a commercial broker that happened to be two side by side four families that would sell really well as residential deals on the.
Yeah. And we did perform work on them to attract residential buyers who have different preferences, a different standard, considering that they're going to live in it. That we did some repairs on the sewer, we did some foundation work, we made it ready to the person that wanted to buy in and live in it. And one of the person who bought one of the fourplexes, when they used an FHA loan and only had to put 14K down. So it's a great win for them. But then for us, we get the price that we wanted at 438K for a fourplex. So yeah, it was a great deal.
And we had other partners in that deal who brought capital and were able to get a good return.
Yeah. Yeah. So started to learn more about the apartment space, the larger multifamily space, and had the opportunity to co-GP with a very reputable general partner over in Cincinnati. Their name is Venture Real Estate. They've gone full cycle 29 times. And even their deals that were bought as the market was shifting, a lot of those deals are continuing to cash out refinance, and they're not having the struggles and capital calls as many other operators are today, partially because they're a well-oiled machine. They're buying these, not over leveraging themselves or on bridge debt. And the other part of it is because Cincinnati is a fundamentally stable market, even looking at just rent trajectory over the last few years compared to other markets where supply has boomed. So they have been having to give a lot of concessions to keep their occupancy up and things like that. So I partnered with them for the opportunity to work on a project. It was a 500 plus unit deal, Class B building that was built in between
Where is that?
2001 2006. It's Hamilton, Ohio, the city of Hamilton. Yeah. So within greater Cincinnati. And I was extremely excited that I was able to provide value to them coming from the venture world myself, which is private equity at its core, and partner with them, help them review their financial statements, and then also raise capital, put together the capital for the deal, and a little bit of marketing and investor relations. So being able to talk to them and pick their brain and learn about how they scaled over time into the operation that they are. They had been around since 2013, and probably just 1 or 2 years ago, they implemented EOS, and that was a huge game changer for them. And we've all drunk the EOS Kool-Aid now, right? We've all read Traction and tried to figure out how to get our business set up the right way. It really becomes the next best step because for a lot of those deals, compared to my little 6 unit, I thought, oh, wow, this is more efficient than buying a single family home. I'm buying a 6 unit. But the lending opportunities, the financing terms get a lot better compared to what my little 6 unit. You have better lending opportunities. You have the opportunity to put on-site staff, and just having more units. If you're organized, it can go both ways, but if you're organized, can really help you in your operations. Yeah, so my career background is in finance and accounting. I spent 2 years in Big Four public accounting, and one of my big clients in the venture capital space was Sequoia, which is one of the largest VCs. I had a number of other big VCs that we were auditing. And then I got my CPA and then went off to work at a venture capital fund. I worked for it had a shared back office, so a number of different VCs, primarily Canvas Ventures, and I was at the same firm for for a decade, for between 2014 to 2024. In 2019, I bought my first property and was house hacking at that point in time, and really started in. I was always looking at Ohio. Did scaling my portfolio in 2022. I think I acquired 24 units, or maybe it was 32 before I left my job. So I was doing that on the side. And then I went full time into real estate investing, focusing on deals, focusing on how to buy apartments, partnering with you, doing some consulting work for Three Little Pigs Investments, landing a co general partner role with venture real estate, and then slowly picking up all the experiences and scaling my portfolio to be able to lead and run deals.
Ian, you and I used that 8 unit deal in Northside as an opportunity to get to know one another, feel each other out, figure out our partnership. We have sold that. We own significantly more real estate than that together now. So clearly, we value each other as partners and recognize that our skills, our styles complement one another really well. Ian, talk to our listeners who are considering partnerships, whether it's because they're in San Jose or Santa something in California and they want to invest in Cincinnati, or whether there's someone who is here locally who knows that they need access to more capital to keep investing the way that they want to. Give us your perspective on why our partnership is compelling for you personally, where you're coming from with investing, and what it is that we're able to do together that you wouldn't be able to do by yourself.
Yeah, so I'll bucket a few things here. So, when you're forming a partnership with someone, it is a big deal, but you gave me a perspective that I really remembered, which is that unlike us forming TLP investment services, which feels more like a marriage, being 50-50 business partners, when you partner together on a deal, there is a defined business plan and a defined end date and terms that go into that business plan. If you're doing a burr, it's even shorter, right? That marriage could be one and done, and then you realize that it wasn't a fit. Different business plans, maybe it might be a 5 year hold, but they're one off projects, right? That is not to understate the importance of finding good partners. And if you're looking to find good partners, there are really two ways of looking at it. There's the personality, ethical, moral vibe between you and the partner that you're working with. There's just a personality fit. And then there's a skills fit as well, right? So the skills based fit usually falls into four categories. You'll hear the brain, the hammer, the hunter, and the money, right? But in general, that is the person underwriting the deal, the person cold calling or talking to brokers, building those relationships and getting a deal under contract, the person being boots on the ground and operating the deal, and being the person who's managing the project and making sure that everything falls in line with its deadlines. And then you have the person who's putting together the money. And
And real
within,
quick, for credit is due, that four-part partnership model came from the DeRosa Group. The figurehead of the DeRosa Group is Matt Faircloth. If you want to learn more about that, please look them up. They're fantastic. Matt's a wonderful guy. Been able to connect with him at conferences, have a few personal phone calls with him. They're great people to look into. I'm not aware of them doing any investing in Cincinnati, but if that is compelling to you, look up the DeRosa Group and Matt Faircloth. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
yeah, they're great. And that framework is the easiest way to remember it rather than me saying you need an investor relations person and an acquisition analyst. At the core, they're the roles that you need in an investment firm. But those are the analogies that you need to fill within your partnership. So having all of those four boxes crossed off, whether it's with two or three or however many partners are in your core group, you just need to make sure that in terms of your competency to be able to succeed, that you have those skills matched. In terms of alignment, that's more of a just a personal thing with your partner. You want to make sure that you're working with somebody that you trust and somebody with similar values and similar core beliefs. And I think being on the consulting side for TLP gave me a good look at, we talk about mission and core values quite a bit, right? We talk about
Within TLP, yes.
within TLP, but it gets carried forward. I find myself quoting a lot of the TLP core values quite a bit just in general, right? Profit through compassion, or helping you build your house of bricks, or these values that have allowed us to work together, even in the consulting relationship outside of being, and now TLP leadership relationship outside of being co-investors, right? We value grit, but having those verbalized and knowing that we're on the same page in terms of our values is important as well. And the way that our partnership formed, it started with a project that was small, but made a lot of sense. It was an 8 unit. We raised 190K for it. You're local. You can walk to the properties if you need to. It's right by your office. And it was a deal that just made a lot of sense. We had come off the Cincinnati investors field trip where you had just shown my group of investors your neck of the woods and talked not only about property management and real estate investing, but even just the history of Northside. So this is really your area. And then I was able to put together the capital. And we did have a third partner on that deal at the time who also did a great deal of work on acquisition and all that stuff as well. So that was our test run, and it led to further conversations and me consulting with you. And when we did our first 70 plus unit project together, that becomes a lot more involved. You probably heard too much of me calling you late hours of your time nonstop, and
Yeah, I'm early to bed nowadays. You've got there were a lot of missed calls. It took you a while to figure me out. You were like just getting off the clock at work, and I was in bed already.
yep. Going through that, but we were technically not TLP Investment Services at the time, but it was such a big transaction and it had been in our minds. We went through a lot of difficult moments throughout that deal. It felt like the kitchen sink was thrown at us, just trying to get to close. And we just learned a lot about each other, and we complement each other both in many ways and through our skill set as well, that this partnership was able to form. I don't feel like there's a missing box in our partnership as we lead deals either.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. A couple of quick points of clarification for our listeners. I have been in the game a bit longer than Ian has, and my company, Three Little Pigs, which for those of you watching, you can see above each of us, that is my operating business that's designed to do all of the things that real estate investors need done from an operations perspective. So, as a property manager, we are partnered with my broker, Keller Williams Seven Hills Realty, of course, and I have a DBA of TLP Property Management. We also have in-house maintenance, construction management, and that is the company that Ian is consulting with. He has much more of that CPA and to some degree CFO experience that I don't. And so he's been very valuable in that consulting. I know a lot of you are listening to this right now because you found us through social media. So you know he's already good at that too. Those are things that I needed help with as well. And those are the consulting services. As business partners, we partner on real estate investment deals where you're not going to hear us advertise them on this podcast. It's not like we're going to be telling you that we've got an upcoming deal and we're looking for people to join it. But those are deals that we structure together, that we do often bring in other partners to contribute capital to. And we plan to continue doing that. Ian, it's time to wrap up our episode. I do have one last question for you. Give us your best hidden gem in Cincinnati. It doesn't have to be real estate related, but when you're in town, other non-local investors and prospective investors come into town. What is that thing that they need to experience?
I'm going to give you three answers. The place that I always end up going to is Mazunte Taqueria. I always get the blue corn tortilla quesadilla, and then I get something else to try something else. One of my go-to spots. That one's over in Madisonville. I always seem to get invited to a dinner at Soto. So I feel like that's just an answer that I should. The last three times I've been to Soto, I was there for my birthday dinner, and then I was there with other people as well. So Soto is one of my favorite pasta places. It's not just Cincinnati, it's a really good place. And the last, to give you a funky answer, is going to be they used to have the pizza place within Mad Tree, Catch a Fire. The reason why I throw that one out there is because they have a Skyline chili pizza. And
Oh yeah,
that
Stewie says
Skyline,
that every once in a while too, and it works.
yeah.
Yeah. It's more like a Skyline dip pizza because they do the chili sauce, they get the cream cheese. Yeah, man.
And on my bucket list is Starlight Donuts because they have a Skyline chili donut, which sounds gross.
Starlight Donut Lab in Norwood. When you're in town,
Yeah.
we'll do that.
Yeah.
All of their donuts are weird. Most of them are weird in good ways, but they do only funky donuts at Starlight Donut Lab. It's like a little, it's not a hole in the wall, but it's like someone put a cement block box in front of their house and they have a teeny little window that they sell donuts out of. But they're delicious. And it's all funky flavors. Yeah.
Yeah. Our Airbnb is actually
Right. Of
walking
course it
distance
is.
to that.
Yeah.
And we have a mural that actually pays tribute to all the Cincinnati foods. And I had the person doing the drawing, I had him add Starlight Donuts, the logo onto it, but it has graters, it has Skyline, it has all the different places to eat as well. That mural was done by Jason Snell, who did a lot of the murals in downtown Cincinnati, including one of my favorites. There's a guy by the name of Ezra Charles. There's Ezra Charles
Oh, yeah.
Drive. He's a Cincinnati Cobra, and there's a really cool mural of him that probably the first 10 times I went to Cincinnati, I was taking selfies in front of until I finally got over doing that. But he was the one that did that mural, and pretty cool little feature to our Airbnb.
Ezra Charles, depending on what part of the career you're looking at, 15 to 25 years before Muhammad Ali. I've heard rumor, just for fun, Muhammad Ali and Ezra Charles were involved in a promo together. And coming out of that promo, Muhammad Ali said about Ezra Charles something he's never said about anyone else. That's a punch he didn't know that he could take in the ring.
Wow.
So shout out to Ezra Charles. Awesome. Ian, thank you. This has been great. Thank you all for listening in. We're in the process of launching our social media accounts for this podcast. We'll have those linked in the show notes. In the meantime, go check those out. Please subscribe to our show when you see that we drop a new episode every week, and we will talk to you next week.